She's leading the composting campaign called Compostilion, Compostman in English. I hope I pronounced that correctly, and has been promoting composting nationally during the last 5 years by organizing countrywide campaigns and conducting training and webinars, and working together with governmental institutions on composting topic. And besides that, Anneli is an expert in social change management and initiator of numerous other social movements, founder and CEO of Let's Do It World, organizer of World Cleanup Day that engages millions of people worldwide to one-day cleanup action. So I'm really, really pleased to have you, Anneli, with us today. And in spring, when we're all really getting ready to be busy in our urban gardens, and the topic of composting, how to start or update our knowledge that we have is going to be extremely useful for practical work that we'll start doing right now this spring. So Anneli, please, the
floor is mine.
For you, floor is yours.
Floor is mine. Thank you very much, Evelina. So I'm really, really glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I'm always happy to talk about the composting, which I'm really passionate about. I grew up in a farm, so I was the lucky one, grew up in a farm with all the animals and birds, and the composting was absolutely not a normal but essential part of my life. So for me, it's absolutely normal to compost, and I even can't imagine the life without that. So if I was a child, the compost pile was for me a living organism. Of course, I was thinking that there was a dragon who is living inside the compost pile, because the compost pile was steaming, and I was thinking there is a dragon who is steaming that out. But of course, later on I realized that that was not a dragon, but I was right about that. The compost pile is a living organism, because there are thousands of bacterials and worms and so on who are really eating what we are providing them, and this is basically thousands of beds you will have in the corner of your garden. So today I will talk about composting for beginners. So I will give you like a short overview what it means to compost. How do you understand that you are doing right? So what is the process? What to put inside the compost? What is also showing some difference of and let's do in that way that if you can't hold your questions, then raise your hand and I can also answer immediately. But of course, you can also write in the chat, so we can also handle the questions in the end. So let's start. So first, why composting? Beside that I find that the composting is absolutely essential part of the life. Composting is basically how the earth recycles. So composting is great for the environment, because in our hands is the power to save the waste for being the waste, and we can use the garden leftovers and the kitchen leftovers to produce a really great material, really great fertilizer, what we can use to improve the quality of soil. So we thanks for that, we also don't need to use so many chemical fertilizers, and we can use the natural fertilizer, which is actually much better than the chemical ones, because the plants can eat or observe this natural fertilizer much better than the chemical ones. Composting is also about closing the loop. What it means that that nowadays we are talking about circular economy and how we can speed up transformation to the circular economy. Composting is the perfect way how to enter to circular economy and how everyone can basically participate in circular economy already. And for me, it's also the composting is really great way how to educate the children and show them the circle, the loop of the nature. And my 8-year child is perfectly already understands so how the nature works, and that everything which grow eventually die, and it comes their source for the next life. And I think it's really important for children to understand. And in the end, composting makes you happy. So because there is a lot of scientific research which says that if you are gardening, if you put your finger into soil, if you're composting, it makes you happy. So why not to compost? So I don't see any bad sides of composting. So, but let's go further. So how to compost? As we have a virtual training today, so I'm not able to show you compost and so you can touch it. But the compost, how you understand that the compost is ready is that you can smell it as a soil. It has really pleasant smell, so it doesn't smell like a rotten food or something like that. It smells good. You feel it, and it smells like, for me, it's like a spring. It smells like a spring, like an earth. Composting process, what it means. Basically, the composting process means that we use bio-waste, different kind of organics and water. We put it together, and then there will be a different kind of bacteria, microorganisms, fungi, and forms who are starting to live there. And through this process, we decompose all the materials, and in the end, we'll get ready compost. It's really simple, as you see. And how to understand if the composting process is working? It's the first sign is that our composting pile getting hot. So it can be even 70 degrees and for several days or even weeks. And through that, we understand that the composting is in full speed. There are different bacteria which are working or living in different stages. The first, there are the one bacteria who are working and eating these materials what we put into compost pile. And because of this bacteria, the composting temperature is rising. And then the temperature is rise until 40, maybe 50 degrees. And then comes the next bacteria who will start working there if the temperature is quite high already. And then it starts to come down again, and then it's already fungi and forms and so on. Now you might have a question. So if I don't have this hot compost, does it mean that my compost doesn't work? It's not so. Sometimes the temperature doesn't raise. There is different reasons. For example, maybe there is too cold outside. Maybe it's a winter. Sometimes it doesn't get hot. Maybe the compost pile is too small. This is also the reason why the compost doesn't work. or maybe there is not enough organics or wet food. There is different reasons, but it doesn't mean that the composting process doesn't work. So we recognize two different types of composting: hot and cold composting. Hot means that it's really fully on and it works, but it takes less time than cold composting. Cold composting means that it's still decomposting, but it takes more time, but it still works. So always works. And so how to make a compost pile so it start to work. So the recipe is quite simple. So you have to basically build it up as a lasagna. So I believe that everyone has eaten lasagna in your life. So lasagna means that you have to put different layers, green and brown, one by one into compost. What it means, green layer is everything which is wet. For example, kitchen waste, also green grass. So everything which has water inside and that you can feel it's wet. We call it a nitrogen. And then it's a brown, which means this is a dry layer. It's a carbon, and it can all which is really dry. This is branches. It can be pellets, peat, eggshells, also paper, newspapers, and really great are also cardboard tubes, for example. And in that way, if you put the layers, then the compost starts working soon. So what is the recipe for compost? As I already said, you need a green stuff, nitrogen, also you need a brown stuff. But also what is really important, that you also need air. That means that you should have enough air inside your compost. So if compost goes really down and it's really thick, then bacteria don't have enough air to live there. So you have to provide your pets, your bacteria, enough air. So it means that sometimes you also have to mix the compost pile to give more air into compost. Also, you need water. So bacteria also need water and humidity to live. And that's why we also have to keep enough humidity in your compost. Especially it's important if there is too much brown materials, and if there is a hot outside, then we have to control that there's enough humidity in your compost pile. And of course we need the parks which are coming by themselves, and heat which comes together with parks. So how to understand if the compost is ready? So we know really great and easy test to test the compost. This is called CRESS test. What it means? It means that if the compost is ready, so you will take a bit compost. You put it to the jar. For example, 1/3 of jar you will fill with the compost. Then you put some seeds of cress into jar, some water, and then you close the jar. And if the cress starts to grow, and if the grass is green and how to say in English, not the leaves, but the white area. If this one is white, then the compost is ready and you can use it already. But if the grass is itself, it's brown or yellow, then you maybe have to keep the compost and not use it yet. So this is really easy grass test. So you can understand if you can already use the compost for vegetables. So, but what you can compost? So you can compost garden waste, you can compost kitchen waste, but also you can compost different brown materials, kind of like napkins or egg boxes, household paper, newspapers, also sawdust, peat pellets, twigs, everything which help you to bring some air and also some dryness into your compost. So if you put only the kitchen waste, then it's too much wet material in your compost and it doesn't work properly. So you have to add also the brown materials. The main question what the people have is what I shouldn't put into compost. And that is, of course, many things you have to consider. Should it be should you put it to the compost or not? So the first thing, do not compost, is everything which is not organic. So everything which doesn't decompose or rotten is not the material which should go to the compost. The big question is about biodegradable dishes. People very often put biodegradable dishes also to the compost. First, there is a difference between biodegradable and compostable. So biodegradable, they are not all compostable. So you have to definitely check what exactly it is. So biodegradable dishes doesn't go to compost. Then it's a compostable. There are also compostable dishes. And there is also two different types of compostable dishes. Dishes which compost only in a certain environment. It means that this is only for a production or for the big composting piles. It's usually owned by a municipality, and there is there we can be certain that the temperature is high for a certain time, and the compostable dishes will compost. In home compost, you can't be sure that the temperature is high for a certain period. And that's why the compostable dishes, they are not composting in home compost. But there are also compostable dishes which are compostable in home compost. It means that they doesn't need a certain environment for composting. However, I personally have tested many products which have marked for composting at in-home compost. But the results is that we are still not composting. For example, here on the picture, you can see that these are the products where on the package was written that these products will decompose in home compost during 2 weeks. But these dishes I put into my compost in September, and I took them out from compost in May. And as you see, they are not very much composted. So you have to be really, really careful with composting compostable dishes. I haven't seen any compostable dishes which are actually composting. And if a compost, they actually doesn't bring any, any valuable materials or any valuable nutrients to your compost. So my personal advice is not to put compostable dishes to your compost. And the same applies also to compostable plastic bags. We have many kind of products already in the shops where you can buy the bin with compostable bags. You can collect your bio-waste or kitchen waste in your kitchen, and then take this kitchen waste together with these plastic bags and put to the compost. I don't suggest to do it. So compostable plastic bags, as you see that these green plastic bags in the on the plate, this is the compostable plastic bags, and it also doesn't compost. So what else? Ash. So the question is, can we add ash to compost? There is, again, two things to consider. The first is that very often we don't burn only trees in our ovens or camins. We also, not we, but sometimes people also burn some paper packages. But very often the paper packages are also covered with really thin plastic layer, and people don't realize that. So it means that this plastic is also in the ash. So I don't recommend to add ash to the compost pile. And the second thing that ash is also if you put too much ash into compost pile, then it also can disbalance your pH, sorry, how it's in English, pH level. It means that it gives it can like a disbalance all your compost. I don't recommend to put ash also to compost. Then it's oils and fats. Again, the oils and fats, which is something which bacteria doesn't like, and it also can slow down the composting process. So it's better to avoid add oils and fats into compost. Then it's question about plants with diseases. So there is a question. So if you can properly compost and the temperature is high enough for several days, then the compost will kill all the diseases and all the bad bacteria inside. But if you are not certain that you can keep the temperature high for a certain time, then I also don't advise to add plants which are with diseases into compost, because you can just share the disease all over your garden. Then it's medication. It's even funny to mention that medication definitely don't go to compost, but I got many questions about the medications. That's why I also put medications here. So medications definitely doesn't go to the compost, because this is chemical, and it doesn't belong there. Medication you should bring to the pharmacy. Then is, for example, pine needles and cones. So they are also kind of material which doesn't decompose easily. So also advise to put them to compost. It basically doesn't create any harm to compost, but they are just don't compost. Also citrus. Citrus is also the question, should they put it into compost or not? So that is, again, two questions. The first, there is an acid inside of citrus, and also bacteria doesn't like it very much. That's why I also don't advise to put too much citrus or mandarins or oranges into compost pile. And the second thing is the chemicals which are on the oranges and the mandarins. There are already researches which says that if you keep the compost long enough, all the chemicals which were used to grow these vegetables, all the chemicals, we are going away. We are decomposing. But you can't be sure when we are dissolving in your compost. So then it's you have like a two options to keep the compost long enough for a year, for even 2 years before you can use it as a fertilizer in your garden, or just don't put the vegetables which you know that there has been used a lot of chemicals to raise them up. Then it's also a question about any construction materials. Basically, the construction material is also wood. So the wood is compostable, but the wood which comes from construction, this is very often already together with some chemicals. Different lacks or different kind of like liquids which help to keep the wood in better condition. And very often you don't understand that the wood is not anymore the pure wood, but it's already with something. And that's why everything which which is left over from construction, it doesn't go to the compost. Then it's a dust bag. Dust bag also, if you clean your home, so dust is not organic. There is a lot of microplastic in a dust, so dust doesn't go to the compost. And in the end, leather. So I also received many questions if I can put, for example, my old leather jacket into compost, because this is a leather and it should be organic. Definitely not, because the leather is not anymore organic, because in order to wear the leather jacket, the leather is also there is also a lot of chemicals, in order to keep it in that condition as jacket needs. So leather jacket doesn't go to compost. Now is the question, non-organic vegetables, which are already actually covered. So you have to consider, if you want to put vegetables which comes from non-organic sectors, do you want to put them into your compost or not? Some people are doing in that way that they are keeping two compost piles. The one where they put basically everything, and they use it for flowers and non-eatable plants. And then the second one where they put only selected materials, definitely organic vegetables and really like a pure things. And they also like think what they put into compost, so to guarantee that the compost, ready compost, is really full of fertilizers and there is no harmful nutrients. Then it's also a possibility that if you are not sure to put it to the compost bin, which is going to eatable plants, then put it to our compost bin, which is not going to eatable plants. Then it's pets, pets urine and pets fecals means that there is also a possibility that you will put all the parasites also into compost. So the pets fecals doesn't go to the compost. Meat and bones. Meat compost. Meat basically is organic and it is decompostable. But the question is that they don't compost very quickly. It takes time. And the second question is that if you compost the meat, it also rotten very, very quickly and it starts to smell. Also, it attracts animals, definitely, and rats. So you have to consider that. So how to keep compost rats free. And in the end, the meat, and maybe it's even the most important question, is that nowadays the meat is not very pure anymore, because our agriculture use a lot of medications, a lot of antibiotics, a lot of different medications to grow animals, and it also in a meat. So the question is, do you want to put all these antibiotics and all the medications into compost and eventually to eat it through the plants? And yeah, so it's up to you. So how to do it? Bones, I think it's obvious that the bones we are not decomposed very easily because we still find hundreds of years old bones from the earth. It means that we are really a really strong substance, and they also do decompose. So there is no point to put the bones into compost. And the milk basically has the same thing as meat. Milk doesn't compost easily. It will smells easily. It attracts animals, and again there is a lot of antibiotics and kind of medicine in that milk if it's not organic. Then you have to again consider if you want to put it into the compost bin or not. Then it's very often the question, if you have the one material which is really huge amount, so the main rule is that don't put into your compost only like one material, because it doesn't work, and the fertilizer is not fertilizer anymore. It's really like a monomaterials. So you have to keep your compost really diverse. So, but in this case, what to do with apples, for example? There is also different practices what the people used to have. Of course, first of all, make a juice out of these apples. Don't let them rotten under the trees. But if the apples are already in that condition, as you see on the picture, Then is the one possibility is also to just make a big hole and put the apples into the holes and cover with the soil. This is the one option what you can do. Also, I see that some people have a practice that they put the apples under the plants. So we basically make a big hole, put all the apples there, cover with soil, and then plant the different plants on them. Or you can also compost them on different compost piles. So it's will be like a just apple compost pile. This is also a possibility. Then it's how to compost leaves, because during the autumn we have a lot of leaves and what to do with them. So the first suggestion is that don't take them off, because this is normal for nature, and don't take them away. Let them compost on the earth. This is the most normal. But of course, in some point there is too many leaves, and maybe we will we don't want to have such thick layer of leaves in the garden. Then it's also possibility that you will take a mow and mow the lawn with the lawnmower. It means that the leaves are going really small pieces, and they decompose already for the spring. So in the spring you don't see them anymore, and they are decomposed, and you basically already gave grass nutrients and fertilizer what they need. This is the most easiest way how to handle the leaves. And the second option for the leaves is compost them in plastic bags, as you see on the picture. So basically you can put all the leaves into plastic bags, then make a holes into plastic bags, and then add some humidity, and then close it, and then we will stay there. The composting process takes around a year or even 2 years. It depends on circumstances. It's advisable that you can also check the compost for a while, and if they are too dry, then you can also add some water. It also helps them to decompose quicker. So this is also one option for the leaves. And then, so what to do if the compost is smelling? Because this is the main threat what people have, especially if I have a kitchen waste together with garden waste and it starts to smell. So if the compost is smelling, it means that there is too much kitchen waste, and you have to add more dry layers or a dry substance to compost. So just add some branches, paper or pellets or something which is dry, add to the compost, and then just mix the compost, and I believe that in that way the smells goes away. The second thing what you should do is that if you put the kitchen waste to the compost, always add the brown layer, the dry layer on the kitchen waste. Don't let them be as you can see on the picture, because in this way it really starts to smell before it decomposed. So always try to keep the dry layer on the kitchen waste. Then it's the second problem what the people are struggling are fleas. The fleas are basically the same thing. So don't let the kitchen waste to be on the top. Always cover it with the brown layer. then the fleas also is not a problem. Also, if you can see the fleas eggs in your compost, some experts also do advise that they just, put the eggs deeper into compost, then the fleas are not coming out. And then it's rats. So what to do with rats? Because there is a lot of kitchen waste, and rats definitely will enjoy that the humans are bringing every day some kitchen waste to their homes. So what you can do is that put the metallic net inside of the compost bin, so thin that the rats can't go through it. So this is the best way how to keep rats away. And for animals, you can also keep the compost bin as a closed, which means that you also build a cover for the compost bin. At my summer house, I also have a compost bin, and as I live in the reserve area, there are a lot of animals, and of course we are also visiting my compost bin. I haven't covered it because I see that doesn't matter if I eat the kitchen waste. It's basically, for me, it's also circular economy. Let them eat them, and basically we can also benefit from my kitchen. But of course, I also struggling that I don't have enough compost because foxes are just eating all the materials. Then it's also a question, can I compost during the winter time? The answer is yes, you can compost also during the winter time. Of course, if there is minus temperatures outside, it means that the composting process will go really slow. So, but still there are bacteria who are still working. How you can increase the process is that you will make the hole into your compost deeper, and then add the kitchen waste into compost. Then add also warm water and then cover carefully. In that way, inside of compost, there is still warm and the bacteria will work there. And on the surface, there is colder. In that way, basically, you can compost also during the winter time. The second possibility is how to compost during the winter time is to buy special composters. There are composters who have double layers, which means that they keep warm easily. And there are also electrical composter, which is also a possibility. So I'm prefer more the natural solution. That's why I'm talking about how to compost easily without any technology. But however, it's also possible to use advanced technology to compost during the winter time. So then in the end, what kind of composter I should make? Basically, we have open composters and closed composters. In Estonia, we have a law which means that if you are living in urban environment, you have to have a closed composter for kitchen waste. And you can have open composter for only garden waste. I don't know exactly how it's in Lithuania, but I believe that there are some similar rules for composting. So you have to consider that where you live, and then you have to also consider if you need open or closed or both composters. closed composters doesn't mean that you have to buy the plastic composter from the shops, which are usually quite expensive. The closed composter means that you have to just cover your composter in order to keep the birds and animals away, as you see on the picture. So this is the closed composter, and you can basically use that one also in urban environment. So how to build the composter? The composter, I think it's really great architecture, because you can use your fantasy as much as possible. Only the sky is the limit. And what I recommend is to, if you build the composter, build at least in that way that you have like 2 boxes. Why? Because if the one box is full and the composting process is on, you can already add some new stuff to the other box. And if one box has already ready compost and you can use it, then you can add the materials to our box. So it's just for you, it's easier to handle the composter. Of course, if you have only one box, it means that you sometimes you just have to wait until the compost is ready and then use it, or you just have to dig deep to take the compost out from the bottom. The rule is that you have to build the composter on the earth. Don't build it on the wooden floor or on the stone floor. No, it has to be on the earth in order to take away the moisture or the water. And also all the worms can also come through the earth. So it's important that the composter is on the earth. And the composter should be not directly under the sun, but also not under full shadow. So it's would be great if it's a bit shadow and also sun, because this is, I think, is the best condition also for the composter. In that way, you don't have to take care it so much. For example, if it's under direct sun, you have to add water constantly. Or if it's under full shadow, then it might be maybe too much humidity in your compost. And lining with net, I also talked already about. And then there are also closed composters, and there are regular composters, also the composters which are meant for winter time, and also electric ones. So what you have to consider in terms of closed composter is that they are closed, and there is not so much oxygen in the closed composter, and you might mix the composter often when the open one. And also it's good if you can just keep some brown materials next to composter. So if you add some kitchen waste to composter, you can also add immediately some brown materials also. And here I put some pictures which is painted composters. And here I also encourage you to not to hide composter in the corner of the garden, but use it also as the decoration for your garden. I believe that compost pile is so important that it also can be like in the middle of garden, or it's like it can be like also something which gives some extra decoration for your garden. So just release your fantasy, paint it, or do whatever you want, so that the compost pile is also something which is beautiful in your garden. I also put here as educational composting. So I know that many of you do urban gardening, and if you talk about urban gardening, then it's then there are also people who don't have any experience with composting and gardening. So, and you can also use it as an educational part of urban gardening. It means that if you, for example, build a compost bin, which has the glass wall, then you can also show the children who are visiting your urban garden how the compost process really works. So we can see that in the bottom there is already ready compost, but in the surface there is still the green materials. This is something which is really great to great for children to explore. Just an idea. And then it's also possible to buy vermicompost, which means that that the composting process will be done by worms, special worms. The vermicompost you can buy, and you can also build it by yourself. The overall architecture of vermicompost is quite simple, and there has to be at least 3 layers. And the over layer is kitchen waste. Then in the middle there are worms, and in the bottom there is already ready compost, and also there has to be the way where the additional water comes out. So there are a lot of videos how to build your own vermicompost in YouTube. So if someone is interested, then you can find a lot of materials about that. But I have to say that the vermicompost is not just alternative composting. This is definitely to buy pets into your home. It means that they are worms, and you have to also give them constantly food. So we need food. So it's not just like using them to compost the kitchen waste what you have sometimes, and maybe sometimes not. So for example, vermicompost is definitely for people who are traveling a lot, and maybe there are weeks when we are not home. So we are pets and they need food. And then it's such kind of composter, which is a great possibility to compost maybe a smaller amount of materials. And this is great because you can always turn it around and add some additional oxygen. So it's also taking the compost process quicker. Then here is one startup from Estonia, which called Wastefox, and this is the composter which meant for the apartments and using on terrace. So we have also the one composter which is electrical one. So it means that they are giving preheating to your composter. Here you have to definitely add some bacterials, so in order to start with composting process. And then it's also really fancy ones, like electrical ones for the kitchen. And I also just wanted to show the one composting facility, which is in the really fancy restaurant in Tallinn. And they have 24-hour composter, which means that they compost all the food leftovers from the restaurants in their composter, and then they will use the ready compost for the community, which is really great. And it's really good example that the composting is not something which has to be done only near the houses or by individuals. It can be also used in really like a fancy restaurants. There is no borders. And I also recognize that very often why people don't start with composting is because they don't want to start to collect bio-waste in their kitchen because they believe that it starts to smell. And there are the one really like common mistake what people are doing is that if they start to collect bio-waste in the kitchen, they start to collect them into closed bags or closed bins. It means that there is a bin and you put the kitchen waste inside and you put something to cover it. But this is not a good way to do, because in this way, the kitchen waste really start to smell. The tip how to avoid smelling is that you have to add already in the kitchen so-called brown materials. For example, napkins or these paper tubes or egg boxes, paper egg boxes, which is really good. The secret is that you have to bring down the humidity in your small bin or bag, and in that way it doesn't smell, and you always have to keep it open so it, the additional moisture can just go away. And in that way it doesn't smell. It never smelled at my home. So, and it's really easy to collect kitchen waste. And there is some pictures from different areas. This one is made in Tallinn. It's an urban garden in Lasnamäe, which is a big area of really high floor houses, and there is a really great urban garden, and they are composting there, and you can see that there is also leaf compost under the or behind the compost bin. There is the one example of compost bin which has even 4 boxes. This is one which is covered compost bin which has 3 boxes. This is also a possibility. This is also great because you can turn the compost here quite easily. As you see, the compost bin can be really, really nice and add some extra value to your garden. And this is already something which is really like kind of like a house for a composting already. So again, it depends how you want to solve the composting in your garden. And for the end, I just want to say that the composting is really fun. It's a live organism, as I said in the beginning. It means that if you start composting, you basically gain thousands of pets in your garden, and this is really great. And you never can fail with composting because the nature always helps you. The nature always helps you. So this is now everything what I wanted to say today. I hope that I gave you an overview about the composting from different angles. And if you have any questions, so I can answer them. And also you can see the email here on the slides. Then if you have some more question after the training, then you can just write me and let's discuss it.